Yeah, it's absolutely dead. It's not even fair. Totally dead. Way quieter. Yeah, way quieter. Boy, do I have something for you here on the channel today, and that is the Kaminski Archery Barebow weight. We're launching these today, and I can't wait to share with you the actual details of this product. It's been so hard to keep my mouth shut over the past several months while we were working on this product and developing it and getting it ready to go. I'm so excited about it, and I can't wait to share with you the details. So before I get too far into this video, I want to thank first Heather, Thomas, George, and Ryan for putting so much time and effort into this project and helping me out with these Barebow weights. I think they turned out awesome. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to review the product, kind of give you an overview of the basics of the ins and outs of the product. We'll get a closer up look, and then I'll share with you all the data we've gathered and a little bit more information later on in the video, so you can stick around for that if you're interested in hearing more about what the differences are as far as the vibration properties, the audio qualities, and things like that. Man, my arm's getting tired already. This bow is beefy with all three weights on it, and they are available in 3 different sizes. They're available in a 21 ounce, a 14 ounce, and an 8 ounce, and they're also available in black. The silver ones are just your standard stainless steel that we laser etch with black lettering. Now these black ones are made out of stainless steel as well. They're just nitride coated, and then I laser etch these to remove the actual coating to reveal the white or silvery gray stainless steel down below for the lettering. So none of these products will ever rust, even the black ones, no matter how much you scratch them, and the actual lettering will not rust itself. But most importantly, these Barebow weights are dampened. There's a damper built inside of them. We've actually teamed up with Doinker and put Doinker technology inside of these Barebow weights, and we're seeing more than 60% in vibration reduction when compared to a standard weight with no dampening in it, no damper inside of it. I have all that data, and I can't wait to share with you that later on in the video in case you're interested in seeing the actual data and the facts, because as a company, we don't like to just make claims. We like to also provide that data so that way you can do your own analysis in case you're interested, and you can check our work to make sure we're providing you fair, honest data that is actually validating what the claims are that we're making. All that will be available on my website, jkaminski.com, and that's where you can actually grab these Barebow weights at my website, jkaminski.com. They're available right now. Not only do these Barebow weights kill a massive amount of vibration, they also make your bow much quieter. The first time I ever shot next to a Barebow archer was at Field Nationals. I was shooting my Olympic-style recurve with a clicker, and when I was warming up on the practice range, I met my first Barebow shooters, and of course they had extremely lightweight arrow setups and very, very critically set up bows that just sounded like shotguns going off in my ear. So, needless to say, I avoided them the entire time on the practice range and refused to come to full draw if they were at full draw next to me, because when their bow went off, it would be such a shock, it would take me out of my space of where I normally am when I'm shooting my bow, and I just couldn't execute shots next to them. Just something so crazy. Now, with these weights, this bow is actually quieter than my recurve. It is incredible how much of a difference the quality of audio makes when you are using a dampened Barebow weight. It sounds genuinely better than a recurve, even without limb sabers. Yeah, way quieter. I'm so happy that we'll actually be able to get more reasonable sounding Barebows out there finally on the line, because they are terrible. Especially indoors, it's very, very loud, especially in a very tight indoor space that has a small range. Barebows can just be so loud and be very distracting from other shooters. And so these type of weights really kill the noise. And I've got some more information for that later on in the video as well. So you'll be able to see, because I placed my camera in different places, 3 different spots around me, so you'll be able to hear the difference between a non-dampened solid Barebow weight to the Kaminski Archery Barebow weights and the various different sizes with them in various different locations. Also, the same thing applies to the actual vibration dampening. As far as the data is concerned, we gathered many different configurations, many different setups on a couple of different bows, and you'll be able to see all that data as well. So included in each package of the Kaminski Archery barebow weights are 2 different size washers. There's a 3mm and a 5mm spacer. And what those are going to allow you to do is to add them behind the weight themselves to space the weight further out away from the bow. So you just can continue to add and remove those spacers until the barebow weights pass through the ring and just barely pass through it. So I can still add a considerable amount, probably another 3mm spacer in the bottom, another 3mm spacer in the main stabilizer bushing, and probably at least a 5, if not a 5 and a 3 spacer up in the top. And again, what that'll do is just add a little bit of forward balance, at least trying to maximize what we can do within our limits of the actual class of barebow, trying to get that weight as far forward as possible, as far away from the riser as possible, will give you a little bit more leverage to help hold that bow just a little bit more steady. So being able to actually run dampers in our barebow weights makes a huge difference, and as you can see, it reduces an incredible amount of vibration. I cannot praise World Archery enough for changing the rules to allow dampers for barebow weights, and the reason that they told me, the reason that I was told why they were adding it into the actual rule book to allow vibration dampers, is to increase the longevity of an archer's career, which totally makes sense. Because if you have some vibration that is constantly vibrating and ringing your bones and your structure, it's going to wreak havoc. You're going to see all sorts of inflammation, all sorts of joint pains, and all sorts of different issues that are going to arise over time. And we've already started to hear some anecdotal reports from one of Europe's top barebow shooters that is actually using these products already. And he claims that he can shoot 100 arrows more in a given training session before he starts to really feel fatigued, because these just kill so much vibration and it doesn't punish his body so much. And it makes a tremendous amount of sense that an archer should be able to sustain training and train more with less fatigue because there's less shock load on the system. Overall, there's much less vibration being transferred to the body, and so it should, in theory, really lead to longer careers. So some other really cool anecdotal reports from people that have already started to try these barebow weights is that it helps reduce target panic, or at least the anxiety around target panic, and allows them to deal with it a little bit easier because it reduces the overall shock load in the system and it dramatically quiets the bow down. So I'm really excited to see where this product heads and what happens within the barebow community and how much of a difference using dampened barebow weights has made, whether that be from longevity, from being able to train longer, or at least being able to be in less pain, and possibly even being able to deal with target panic a little bit easier. So now that we've covered the basics of the actual Kaminski Archery barebow weight, I'm going to throw the camera over the bench so we can see a little bit more of a close-up view of the actual product. I'll show you the 2 different colors, I'll show you the spacers, and kind of give you an idea of how much these things do move around when we are shooting them off of a bow. And then after we get a close-up view, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the actual data of the vibration analysis and explain to you where we saw differences and how much of a difference it actually made in various different configurations. And then what I'll do is I'll take you outside and we'll shoot a couple of arrows, like I said, from 3 different positions with a few different weight setups. So that way you'll be able to hear the difference between each shot and be able to hopefully put a bit of an idea as to how much of a difference this makes as far as audio quality is concerned. All right, so now that we're over the bench, you'll be able to see a little bit more of the differences between the weights between the 8, 14, and 21 here. You'll see that the outside diameter just gets bigger as they get heavier. The actual length doesn't change at all, and we tried to do this on purpose, actually, to try to keep the length the same. The reason we actually made these on purpose the same is that we wanted to try to keep the overall length as compact as possible to start with, and then have a very long rod here that you can screw into the bow that you can then add these spacers to make them space further out away from the bow depending on what you're looking for. The reason being is that some of the recurve risers that people are using these days are a little thick in the pocket area, so it already starts to take up a considerable amount of weight when you're trying to pass a barebow ring over the actual pocket. But you'll be able to unscrew the weight itself and then take some spacers, and we'll just grab a 5mm and a 3mm and stack it on there. Those are 2 different sizes. See if we can still pass it through the barebow weight, or the barebow ring. And you'll see that it runs into it, and I can't possibly get it over. I did print this barebow ring a little bit undersized and it has shrunk a little bit. So it's probably actually legal, but I can't get it quite through that ring there. So what I'll do is I'll drop one of the 3mm spacers. And now that I've got just a single 5mm spacer on, you'll see that it just barely passes through the ring. Now you would want to do that with all of these barebow weights. And you'll see here, this one could use a spacer as well down in the bottom. And this is the 14. So I'm going to add the 5 as well because that's what it was on the top. And the top pocket and the bottom pocket on this ATF DX are pretty similar. Now I can just barely get that ring over my barebow weight. And then the middle one, there's still a little bit of space. So what I'm trying to do here is maximize the forward weight balance as much as I possibly can to try to get as much leverage against the bow, meaning that the weight is pulling on the bow in a way that adds stability. So now you can see how much further out away from the bow this weight normally would be way back here, but we've got it forward almost a good inch. And it still passes the barebow ring even with 3 spacers of 11mm here. So it's really spacing these weights farther out away from the bow that is going to help give that front leverage to help hold the bow as still as possible. And like I said previously, the weights are laser etched. As you can see, we've got really beautifully finished 303 stainless steel here, as well as nitride coated 303 stainless steel. So either the stainless, the silver, is going to be laser etched with a deep permanent etch that's in black, or this is just going to be a light touching of the laser where it's removing the coating, revealing the stainless underneath, and that's why we have whitish, grayish lettering here on this black barebow weight. So the spacers that come with the black also are in black. And as you can see, all 3 of them are the same. They do change in sizes, as you can tell. The markings also change, telling you in both ounces and grams. 8 ounce, 227 grams. 14 ounce, 397 grams, and 21 ounce, 595 grams. So just in case you would like to have it in metric, that's also available there. And as you can see, stylistically, they're designed to be very similar to our tiller bolts. So we're using the same design elements as our tiller bolts, carrying them over into the barebow weights, and they just scale as the barebow weights get bigger and bigger. They slightly change the actual proportions to look very similar to the tiller bolts. I took some slow motion footage on Ryan's ATF DX when we were doing our prototyping, and you can actually see the barebow weight moving a considerable amount. Not only is it rocking side to side, it's also moving in and out a considerable amount, especially in the lower pocket. So you'll be able to see how much these weights actually move and are dampening as the arrow's coming out of the bow, and that's why it's reducing so much shock. So they do a considerable amount, they move a considerable amount, and overall the bow feels so much better with these dampened barebow weights on it, and I can't wait to hear some feedback from the general public to see what they think about these as well. Okay, so we're outside and we're going to do a few different audio tests comparing the different barebow weight configurations to give you a bit of an idea how much of a difference it makes in the sound. I have markers placed around me in very specific places that will be repeatable, so hopefully the camera will be in plus or minus a few inches of its exact placement every single time. I've got an X where I'm standing as well, so that way it'll be very consistent from shot to shot and setup to setup. So that way it really tries to do the best representation that I possibly can give you as far as what the sound difference is. I have this camera placement very specifically picked out because what I've noticed is, as I've been recording these videos for the last bit of a couple of years now, is that it varies, the sound varies dramatically from where the placement of the camera is. And sometimes, to me, the best sounding bow sounds like absolute hot garbage when the camera's up in that position. So I figure you might as well just move it around in different positions so you get an idea of the different sounds from the different locations of where the camera will be. I think personally this is a huge benefit of these barebow weights just because they cut down on the noise of the actual shot. It's so much more pleasant to shoot next to a bow that is quiet and that doesn't sound like a like a shotgun going off. So I don't know, maybe it's beneficial to have a really loud barebow against your competitors, but for me, I'd rather have one that's nice and quiet. So for all of this, I'm going to use the same crawl. I'm not going to change it throughout the video from the different positions, so that way it's always the same for you. And in case you're interested in knowing, I'm here at 20 yards. So I will be using a 20-yard crawl. So I don't know how well it's going to come through on the camera, but I can tell you from a personal experience that the Thunderstruck Archery weight just continued to hum. And this had nothing to do with the weight itself. This weight is the same as every other solid weight that I've experienced in regards to vibration dampening properties. It's just a solid chunk of mass, just weight. This one happens to be made out of brass, so it's more dense in a smaller package. What I really felt between the three of these is I felt like the bow got the most quiet, actually, with the 14-ounce weight. The 21-ounce weight wasn't as quiet to me in person. What I heard essentially was when I put the 14-ounce on compared to when I put the 21-ounce on, is that the 14-ounce had less middle range hum, less middle frequency. The low was maybe a little bit more dampened with the 21, but the middle range that continues to reverberate for much longer in the shot, where you can kind of hear the limbs go ping, especially with that solid brass weight. That just doesn't exist with the 14. It goes dong and stops much quicker. Whereas the 21, it seems like maybe it's a little higher pitched in the initial hit, but the dampening wasn't as good in that middle range, and I could hear more middle in the actual 21, for whatever that's worth. But once I put both of them on, then it started to really get quiet, and when you add that 8-ounce, it really helps kill the little bit of the higher end of the frequency range. It just seems to do so, at least in my opinion. So hopefully you can hear the difference in the actual audio quality of the bow itself. What I hear, and what I believe you'll hear on camera hopefully, is what you feel. A quicker dampening of the actual vibration. It will end much sooner with the dampened weights, and the different weight options themselves dampen slightly differently, and so that's why, you know, all three of them in each individual weight kills the most vibration on this bow, because it just happens to match certain frequencies with those different mass weights, and it just kills more in the broad range of the frequency spectrum. So when we first started gathering our data on vibration analysis during our prototyping phase, we actually had Ryan shoot his 27-inch ATF DX, and we had accelerometers mounted on his bow. They were mounted on the grip area, right above the grip, on the side of the bow, coming off the side and off the front. So we measured the left to right vibration forces and the front to back vibration forces nearest the grip, as close as we could get to it on the bow, because we thought that would be a really good, accurate representation as to what the archer is feeling. When we were doing that testing, we did various different things, including taking the actual barebow weight that we were using and turning it around backwards and bolting it directly to the bow. So that way it was using the same mass of the weight that is moving, bolted directly to the bow, instead of using the actual damper as the decoupling force to allow it to vibrate and move. So we were doing our best to try to compare apples to apples, so that way it would be a really good representation for us to gather our data on to make a decision as to the design of the actual weight and its interface with the damper. And what we were seeing when we compared a weight of the same mass compared to our dampened weight, we were seeing at a 50-meter crawl more than 55% reduction in vibration, and at a 10-meter crawl, we were seeing more than a 49% reduction in vibration. So after we went through all the iterations with Ryan's bow to find the actual OEM production specs that we were going to use, we then had some prototypes made, and I went back to Austria with my Hoyt GMX 3 series. It was a 25-inch riser, and we had the accelerometers mounted in a different location on the bow. It was also a different bow, so we didn't put them right on the grip. We actually had them mounted on the top and bottom of the riser nearest the pockets. It's just something that we were already testing, and we left the accelerometers in that place without thinking that we should remove them and put them near the grip, just like we did on the ATF DX. So the actual amount of vibration reduction was a little bit less on my bow compared to Ryan's bow, but I think it's because of where we had the accelerometers mounted. It makes a big difference as to what the archer actually feels here with vibration compared to up here. And you can easily check that yourself by grabbing your grip, plucking your bow, grabbing your pocket, plucking your bow, and you'll feel a difference in vibration. And actually when I do that, I feel more in the handle than I do in the pocket, but every bow's different, every design's different, and what I feel is different than what the accelerometer is measuring. Now on my bow, we saw up and over a 60% reduction in vibration when we were comparing a bow with a non-dampened barebow weight to using all three weights. When I put all three weights on my bow in this configuration, we were seeing more than a 60% reduction in vibration. And when we use just one weight in place of the non-dampened barebow weight, we were seeing more than a 36% reduction in vibration. And it actually wasn't even with the heaviest weight. It was with a different one, and I'll share with you that information and explain to you why here in a second. Now, before I get too far into the specifics of the data, what I want to do first is explain to you how to analyze the data and how to look at it, because there's two different graphs that we use to represent the data, and they mean two completely different things. And it's important to note that we use the bow shot when the limbs are hitting their stops, all the way down. That is a trigger, and we take a certain amount of time before that and a certain amount of time after that, and each shot is the same when we're comparing data sets. Basically what we're doing is we're trying to standardize the data so that way we're not fudging the numbers by changing the duration of what we're measuring. We're always keeping the same measurements with the same time, so that way all of the data is exactly the same from shot to shot. Now, as far as the actual data and how it's displayed, we do it in two different ways, using RMS, or root mean square, or PSD, meaning power spectral density. Those two things are very different in the way they're both displaying the data. So let's start with first the PSD, the power spectral density. The PSD shows power distribution over a frequency range from 0 to 1500 Hertz, and the RMS shows acceleration, which allows us to compare efficiency. And this is how we can quantify how much vibration is being reduced. And that gives us our data where we can say we have more than a 60% vibration reduction in using our Kaminski Archery barebow weights that are dampened compared to a non-dampened barebow weight. So now we can get down into the actual data, and I can show you the results of the data itself. So when we use the actual prototype data from Ryan's bow, the ATF DX, we used a baseline. We created a baseline of his riser setup as it is in the OEM configuration with the weight that we were using with a damper, but we turned the weight backwards and bolted it directly to the bow. And we show the difference there of 0.00 on the actual chart, and we're showing this as our baseline. And of course, because we're nerds and we want to see all sorts of different data and see what kind of difference things actually made, we took the weight off itself, and so you'll see OEM dampers, meaning the pocket damper is still there, but there's no weight on the bow, it's just a naked riser. We saw a 19% in vibration increase without any weight at all at that 50-meter crawl. And we saw an additional 5% increase in vibration from using a bare naked riser to taking the pocket dampers out as well with no weight on it at all. Now, this may be a little bit confusing and a bit unnecessary to give you this extra data without a weight on the bow itself, but I believe that it really gives a way for us to quantify our data. So we can say, when we say a 60% reduction in vibration, that is comparing a weight without a damper on it compared to a weight with a damper on it. So that way it's not just a bare bow, it's a weight versus a weight with a damper. Now when we go down the list with his 50-meter crawl, that's where we start to see the huge reduction in vibration, and we got to well over 56%, more than 56% reduction in vibration using a 50-meter crawl when we found the magical sauce. And once we found that, we decided to call it a day and went with that in our production design. So now we'll get to my data, which is actually using the OEM production weights in various different configurations. We did the testing on a GMX 3 Series riser. Again, that was in 25-inch using Axia foam limbs and long. And we measured at the top and bottom pocket. We didn't measure at the grip. And we did this with a 10-meter crawl, all using the same setup, the same configuration, and no changes of the actual bow other than changing the weights themselves. Now to get our baseline, what we used was a solid brass 28-ounce barebow weight, and it was mounted in the main stabilizer bushing. What was different about the way we gathered data on my bow versus Ryan's bow was the way we actually shot and processed the shots. I shot 3 shots of each configuration, and then I averaged the amount of vibration that we were seeing over those 3 shots, and then compared the average of the 3 shots to the other setups. Now, where you're going to actually see these numbers that are 2.8 something 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 is in the upper left-hand corner of the RMS data sheets. So what actually surprised me the most was seeing that the 14-ounce weight reduced the vibration more than the 21-ounce weight. The reason this is because our dampers are the same across all 3 weights. So that means the actual durometer, the stiffness of the weight, or the stiffness of the damper rather, is the same across all the weights. And it just happens to be that the 14-ounce weight mounted on our damper, the way we have it mounted, it is basically optimized to cancel out the vibration of a bow compared to the 21-ounce weight. We're just missing a little bit there as far as the 21 ounce is concerned, and the 14 just happens to match the natural frequency of the bow, canceling the vibration much better, and that's why we see that the actual 14-ounce weight kills 4% more vibration when compared to the 21-ounce weight when mounted in the main stabilizer bushing. So as of now, if you're looking to kill the most vibration with just one weight, if you can only grab one, the 14 actually reduces the most amount of vibration. But if you want to take it up a notch and change the balance of the bow, give it a little bit more of a feel like a recurve, adding that 8 ounce in the top makes a huge difference when you're just going from 1 to 2 weights. But when you go to 3 weights, it really starts to make a difference because we're killing the vibration across a much broader spectrum of frequency, and more mass keeps getting added, which means it reduces the vibration more and more. So the last 2 setups and configurations we shot was in this configuration here with a 14 in the bottom, 21 in the main, and an 8 in the top. And that reduced the actual vibration by 56%. And with the 21 ounce in the bottom, the 14 in the middle, and the 8 in the top, we saw over a 60% reduction in vibration. What's really cool is to actually see the data itself. As you go through my data, when you compare the no weights to the 14, or you compare the no weights to say all 3 together with the 14 in the main, and that's really shocking to see how much of a difference the vibration reduction is actually making when using a dampened barebow weight. As you can see, we've put a ton of time and effort into developing these Kaminski Archery barebow weights, and I'm super excited to finally have them available to the public for sale. As I've said already, they're available on my website, jkaminski.com. However, this first initial run is in limited quantity, and when they're gone, they're gone. We're going to be fully launched and ready to go in the early to mid-December range. However, if you are in the EU and you're interested in grabbing any of the Kaminski Archery products, not just these new barebow weights, but also the Precision Tiller Bolts and the Wave Pro vanes and other things like that, there is going to be a huge announcement coming in the late October timeframe. So you're going to want to pay attention to that and stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe down below and sign up for the email list on my website, because I will be making announcements on all of those channels. So that way you can get in early. And if you're interested in grabbing these, I can ship them to you from here, from the United States. It will take a little bit of time to get there. Not too bad though. It does cost a lot to ship to the European Union, plus the VAT really adds up. But like I said, late October, we're announcing something huge, and I can't wait to share with you that. You know, it's been a really difficult thing for me to actually keep my mouth shut, to not talk about these things, because it's so exciting. I'm very passionate about what I do. It's a lot of fun to develop these products. It's a lot of fun to actually gather the data, to actually quantify and show you what the differences are between a non-dampened barebow weight and a Kaminski Archery dampened barebow weight, and to be able to produce that data and to share it with the public so you guys can check it on your own is super exciting. No other company's doing this kind of stuff, and I can't wait to continue expanding and releasing more and more new products. And there is a lot to come. There's a lot being worked on behind the scenes. And again, I'm sorry I can't talk about the stuff that's happening, only because if I tell you and then it takes longer than expected, I can't just keep dragging my feet and not telling you about things. So I've learned to actually keep my mouth shut and to finally talk about them when they're ready to go. So thank you everybody out there who is actually supporting this channel and excited about the things that we are coming out with, and excited about Kaminski Archery and the endeavors that we're starting and looking to continue expanding into. And a huge thank you, of course, to Thomas, George, Ryan, and Heather for helping me with this product. And again, like I said, huge thank you to everyone who does watch this channel and support. Thanks to the subscribers. And please, if you do get one of these, and you do get your hands on a set of these Kaminski Archery barebow weights, please comment below and let people what you think about them, how they feel, how they look. Be sure to leave reviews on my website. Genuinely, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to review the products and let people know about them. It's really helpful, and getting the word out there is not the easiest thing in the world, and it really makes a big difference if you do let others know about it. Hey, if you like this video, consider sharing it. Genuinely, that would really help this channel out. And also, if you wouldn't mind, please do spread the word about these Kaminski Archery barebow weights. I don't do any advertising, and I really genuinely rely on you to help spread the word about the channel, as well as the products that are available on my website, jkaminski.com. And if you wouldn't mind, please do consider supporting this channel. Like I said before, you can just head to the website and check out all the various different links there. Check out the description below on different ways you can help support the channel. I can't thank those that do support this channel enough because without you, I wouldn't be able to produce this content, and I wouldn't be able to produce these kinds of products without the people that do help support the channel and support what's going on here at Kaminski Archery by shopping at the website down in the description below.